Hello everyone, Niklsun here, and welcome to Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. This is a show where every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we'll be going over all of the day's movie news and going over what it means for the production in general, such as casting decisions, trailer announcements, director announcements, things like that. So, without any further ado, let's get started with today's Hot Topics. And the first topic we have to talk about today is more of a question rather than anything. And this topic just recently came up today. I think some people have been speculating that this could happen, but is Sony planning a female-led Spider-Man spin-off film? The reason that this question came up is because a writer by the name of Lisa Joy was actually just hired on by Sony to pen an upcoming superhero project. There was no details given about who it would be about, whether or not it would be about a potential Spider-Woman or anything of that sort. I think everybody out there who, when they read this information, or even the people who have their sources, they will come to know that this is most likely going to be the Black Cat film. Black Cat was featured in, she wasn't necessarily Black Cat, she was just Felicia Hardy in Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it was alluded in the after credits during those little clips that Black Cat could potentially become one of the characters in the Sinister Six movie. With this potential property coming up, I believe now that that is not the case. I do not think that she is going to be part of the Sinister Six film, although we're going to get more information about that very soon because that movie's coming out in almost 2 years now. They just announced a November 2016 release date for it. The curious thing about this project, though, is that apparently they are eyeing... Now, I don't take this with a grain of salt. I don't know if this is true, and judging by the information we've already got out of Sony, I don't believe this is true, at least in the timeline that they're assuming that it could be. But apparently they are eyeing a 2017 release. So this would be in between Sinister Six and Amazing Spider-Man 3. And I personally believe that they're going to continue to be in the situation that they're currently in if they do decisions like this. If they see the potential for a franchise only out of necessity, only because they've seen what Sony or what Marvel has done with their properties, what they see that DC is apparently doing with their properties, that they're just trying to create their own franchise using one character and his rogues gallery, and trying to find redeeming aspects to those characters to make them more accessible for their own film. The thing that is curious to me, though, is Lisa Joy. Her only credited screenwriting, credits to date that she's actually had completed are 4 episodes of the show Burn Notice, and I believe 3 episodes of the show Pushing Daisies. She has a couple of other scripts that have unknown release dates. They are in quote-unquote development, but more likely in development hell than anything else. But the fact that Sony is still pushing ahead with this one Spider-Man movie a year idea, I think is bad because they haven't seen what positively has come out of their change from abandoning their original time frame of having Amazing Spider-Man 3 in 2016, Amazing Spider-Man 4 in 2018, and on either side of Amazing Spider-Man 4 have the Sinister Six and Venom film. They've now pushed that way back and are putting Sinister Six up ahead of everything else. So having another spin-off film before your Amazing Spider-Man 3, I think is a bad decision. And the only reason that I think it's a bad decision is because we don't clearly have an idea of what their storyline is, how these movies are going to be connected. Because the basic plan, at least from what we understand, is that Sony is trying to create a cohesive universe for all of their characters. But if people didn't respond very well, mainly to the villains in Amazing Spider-Man 2, how are they going to react to a movie outside of Sinister Six? Because Sinister Six is in great hands with Drew Goddard working on that film. I mean, that movie is going to blow people's expectations away. I can almost guarantee it now, just because they have the right creative team behind them. And with this female-led Spider-Man film, which we still don't know what it is, just the assumption is that it most likely is going to be Black Cat. With Lisa Joy coming on and not really having any substantial credits to her name, not having her story structure, her character development, all that kind of stuff, what she is usually able to put into these scripts, we don't know. And so Sony trusting that, to me, it just smells of desperation. It seems like they need to get somebody, they need to make sure that they get somebody on the cheap so that this property can stay as low as possible. They don't want to have $1 million or $2 million writer on board, because then you're going to have a high quality director who's going to have a pretty big price tag attached to him. the cast is going to have a big price tag attached to them, because none of these companies are Marvel. They don't lock in up and coming talent into a 6, 7, 8, 9 picture deal before they actually make it big and secure them when they're very low price. Like, that's one of the reasons why, outside of Robert Downey Jr., everybody on the Marvel team is making peanuts, basically, in comparison. I mean, they're still making a lot of money. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They're still making a lot of money. But in comparison to what some of the other people are making, it's ridiculous. And they have to carry their own films just as much as Iron Man does, just as much as Robert Downey Jr. does. I know that he is the face of Marvel, but still, having one person being paid $50 million for a movie and the next closest person being paid, I think it was $4 million, and that's, to me, is stretching it. I don't even think it got that high. Like, that's a big jump. And Sony it looks like they're trying to captivate on that, but not going for up and coming, going for just cheap people, just people who don't really have a lot of experience. Somebody who they can maybe manipulate into saying, I mean, perfect example, look at Amazing Spider-Man 2. That had so many people saying, this needs to be here, 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 and it just didn't work. And bringing on somebody like this means that they don't have the background to know how to handle these types of meetings and these types of negotiations. They are somebody who's probably going to be very malleable, somebody who they can just mold to what they need to. Just say, hey, we're paying you to put words on paper. We're not paying you for your idea. So you're just going to be the one who's going to take the credit for this. And these are all the notes that you need to put in. Make a script out of it. And so I don't know exactly how they can go about doing this. But one part of me does see that this could potentially work. Again, it's going to my point that I just made. As long as you keep the powers that be away from the creative team. Allow the creative team, the director, the producer, the screenwriter, not the executive producers, not the line producers, not anybody like that, not the CEO, not anybody from the networks or the studios to be involved. Allow the creative team to create everything, and then go to them and say, this is our idea. And if the studio has notes, then have it be a compromise. Have it be, okay, we need to have this included in the film because it's going to set up something for later. Fine. Include it in a way that's subtle, that will work, that won't distract from the overall plot of the movie, i.e. Green Goblin. Amazing Spider-Man 2 should have just had Electro. Electro should have been allowed to develop more, and Goblin should have been hinted at to be the villain in the next film. They should not have had Goblin, because Goblin was in it for 15 minutes. And then Rhino was in it for the last 3. I mean, there's no reason why these characters needed to be in there outside of they needed to sell toys and they wanted to set up Sinister Six. They should have spent 2 films setting up Sinister Six, not one. Not one. And it backfired hard on them. And I think they're learning from that. But another thing on top of this is apparently with this as well, the Venom movie is still on track for apparently a 2017 release as well. I don't believe that in a second. The main reason is because if we have Sinister Six coming out in 2016, I do not see them wasting one of their best characters before Amazing Spider-Man 3. Have there be a single storyline that is spanning these movies. And obviously with differences in each film, but an overarching story over all of these films. And so have Sinister Six and the events of that film lead into Amazing Spider-Man 3. Have Amazing Spider-Man 3 be about the ramifications of what happens when Spider-Man is not around, or when Spider-Man is not able to take care of a group, or when a super group comes together and one of them actually starts to notice that, listen, I'm not in this because I'm bad. I just do these decisions because they work for me. It has nothing to do with whether or not you're nefarious or anything of that sort. And then that group dynamic starts to dissolve, and that leads into Amazing Spider-Man 3. And have Amazing Spider-Man 3 take care of all those ideals, all those ramifications and things like that, while also planting the seeds for a Venom spin-off movie and a Black Cat. But again, planting the seed, not having full sequences devoted to them. And they already hinted at Venom in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Very, very briefly on that computer panel you just saw Venom storage. So to me, there is a way that they could go about doing this, but I personally think that we're not going to get Venom. And the rumor title, by the way, which has me really intrigued, is Venom Carnage. We've kind of heard for a long time that Carnage was going to be the rumored villain in that movie. It only just makes sense. I mean, he's with both of those characters. They're like the Loki and Thor. Like, I mean, it's very difficult to do one without the other because their dynamic works so well, and because Carnage is essentially Venom without a conscience. Carnage is just he's Carnage. He's pure chaos. He's an alien version of the Joker from The Dark Knight, if you will. He just wants to see everything destroyed. He just wants to hurt. He just wants to maim. And Venom is more of an anti-hero, especially in a lot more of his comic book film or comic book graphic novels and a lot of the stories that are made about him. Yeah, he has appeared as a villain, but he's more of an anti-hero. Again, he's more of a I'm out to do things that work best for me, not whether or not it's good or bad. He doesn't care really about that. It's whatever works best for him. And so having the Venom Carnage film will be, I think, really, really intriguing. But I don't believe we're going to get this until at least 2019, because then that will mean that we'll have Sinister Six in 2016. Supposedly, the female-led Spider-Man spin-off film in 2017, although I hope that doesn't come to pass, at least not yet. And then we're going to have Amazing Spider-Man 3 in 2018. Having two Spider-Man related films released in the same year could potentially be a backfire, much like what they had this year, although for different reasons. But I mean, Alex Kurtzman, who is directing Venom, is currently signed on to direct The Mummy, which is on track for a summer 2016 release. So he wouldn't even be able to get started on Venom, like for concept and things like that, until at least the beginning of 2016. Once he's done filming, once they've got a lot of post out of the way and they're just waiting for a lot of the shots to come in, if he's got his first cut done, if he's got the musical overture already figured out and they're just recording that, he'll have time to work on the concept and pre-production of Venom. Which means that they wouldn't be able to start filming until after his press tour is done on The Mummy, which is going to be, I mean, if it's going to be probably a 2-month release for both domestic and international, which means it's coming out at the end of July, I think. So probably sometime in September they would be able to start filming. Let's say October, just to give them a little bit of breathing room. So October of 2016 is when they'd start filming. Probably going to take about 5 to 6 months to film at least. So right there, you know, you're at February, March of 2017 when you're done filming. You're going to need at least a year of post-production on that. So that brings us to 2018. Well, we've already got a Spider-Man film in 2018. So they're probably going to delay it to 2019. And that would also mean that if they know out the gate that they're going to be releasing the film in 2019, that gives them a lot of time. A lot of time to either include things that they want to include, get rid of some of the fat that's on that script, at least, you know, fine-tune it to a way that works best for the character and for the story that they're trying to tell. That's the main thing. If they're trying to tell an overarching story over 7 films, then tell the story over 7 films. Don't set up everything in one film and then use the other 6 just to say, hey, you know what? In that one film, we said all these films are connected, so they're now connected. It's not that way. You have to separate everything, and you have to make sure that everything makes sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, people aren't going to buy it, and then they're not going to get into any of the heavier moments that you try to include in your film. So, to me, I don't see any of these time frames working out. I do see the possibilities of these films coming out, absolutely. I mean, it's a business after all. They are in this business to make money, solely to make money. These are proven properties that can work in the right hands. So, yes, it could work, but 2017, I don't see it. I see Venom in 2019 and maybe a Black Cat movie later on. But I think the main thing with this that they're talking about is they're trying to beat Marvel and Kevin Feige to getting a female superhero film out. Imagine that. Imagine before Wonder Woman or before Black Widow or Miss Marvel that we actually get like a Spider-Woman film. And that's the first prominent female superhero movie that we get. I mean, that would actually be decent. I'm ignoring Elektra. That to me it'd be a fascinating topic to talk about. I don't know if that movie could actually work. I don't know if audiences would buy it. There's a lot to be desired when it comes to these properties. So only time will tell. I'm really intrigued about the Venom Carnage idea. I think that's really cool. I think that has a lot of places that it could go. But like I said earlier, only time will tell. So when we get more information about this, I'll definitely update you guys on here. And the next topic that I wanted to talk about here is kind of an odd one. We've been hearing about this project for a long time in different versions, different iterations, and everything like that. Well, earlier this year, things started to pick up steam on the project because of a couple of reasons. And the project I'm speaking about is Ghostbusters 3. A couple of things that happened. One, Harold Ramis, who was Egon in the movie, unfortunately passed away earlier this year. Ivan Reitman, who was the director of the first two, decided to step back, no longer be the director of the film, although he had been attached to it for a while. He decided to step back and be only a producer on the project and open the door up for another director. Well, then the guys who did Lego Movie and 22 Jump Street, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, were rumored for that property. They shut it down right away because they kind of an idea for it, but it wasn't really jiving with them, and they are the types of creative people who they will only work on a project if they really want to. They don't care about how much money's being thrown up. Unless somebody was to say, here's, $150 million for the two of you. Make whatever you want. This is outside of your budget as well. You guys can have whatever budget you want. I think at that point, they would probably do it for the money. But they turned it down because they didn't really care for the project all that much. And then Max Landis came out with an idea, which sounded really cool. It was about the origin of Slimer. And that would be how the movie could start, and then also cause like a pseudo reboot set in modern day. Well, now it looks as though Paul Feig, or Paul Feig, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name, but he's the director of movies such as The Heat or Bridesmaids. He's got a current new movie coming out called Spy with, it's got Melissa McCarthy, it's got Jason Statham, Rose Byrne is in the movie. Well, he currently is now on the top of the list to direct Ghostbusters 3. But when the report came out, an update on that report came out saying that if Feig was to do it, it would be a full reboot. It would not be Ghostbusters 3. It would be a reboot of the property. But on top of that, it would be an entire female-led cast. And as soon as I heard that, I went, nope, done. And to me, at face value, that sounds bad. It has nothing to do with the fact that they would all be women. My personal opinion on scripts and things like that, unless it's specifically having to deal with someone and their gender is a part of their character, like a part of what actually makes them, then yes, make the characters gender specific in the script. But outside of that, don't make them gender specific. Look for the best actor or actress that could fit that role and allow for their sensibilities to fit into that character and make them even better. That's what they should always do. So them coming out and saying, no, it's going to be all women this time. Why? First off, why are they still trudging along with this property? The amount of people out there who have been asking for it are no longer asking for it. They don't want this property anymore. If you're going to do a reboot or a remake of the movie, then either have it be the same characters and you just have new actors in them telling a whole new story, or you create brand new characters. But don't have it be, well, the first one was all guys, so now we're going to do all girls. That's just dumb. That to me, and there was an article that came out that said it is not a gimmick. I don't believe that for a second. This to me just screams of a gimmick, and I am completely against this. And only because, to me, there's no concept about it. I don't care that they're women. Who cares? And of course you get the guy who has directed two of the most successful female-led comedies in the last decade to get this film. Of course, when he comes on, he says, no, actually, we're going to do it all women. Well, why? That's like when they brought Rob Marshall on to direct Pirates of the Caribbean 4. All the fight scenes looked like dances because they were choreographed that way. You get a guy with certain sensibilities and a certain way of directing films, and he's going to do the film that way, regardless of the previous properties. And so coming out with this and saying it's going to be a full female-led Ghostbusters group, no. I'm sorry, but no. Have it be a mixture of men and women. Have it be, or don't do it at all. That's my complete opinion. Don't do it at all. The reason that Ghostbusters worked so well is because they were a product of their time. They were 80s movies made in the 80s for people in the 80s. And the reason that people still enjoy them to this day, I mean, they are good films on their own, but the nostalgic effect of that movie is really what works. And the only thing that I can think of is that if they were to remake Ghostbusters, they would make it look like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I'm actually kind of excited about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But Ghostbusters is not that. It is not high-octane action. It is not really cool CG special effects and stuff like that. It has its moments, but the core aspect of Ghostbusters and why it works so well are the characters and the interaction between the characters. But not just that, the actors who are playing them. That is, again, why Ghostbusters is one of those rare instances where it's a movie made in its time that really doesn't have any way of being remade and still being decent. Because if you remake it in the way that it would need to be remade today, you would change so much from what it originally was that you shouldn't even call it Ghostbusters anymore. But I mean, it's a catch-22, because if you don't, people are then going to say, well, it's a Ghostbusters ripoff because they called it Ghost Hunters or from Supernatural Ghost Facers. So I mean, to me, there's always the potential that it could work. Always. And I'm the type of person where I will admit, okay, that movie did work. But this is a franchise that died, 30 years ago? 20 years ago? 25 years? I think they just had the 30th anniversary of the first film. So it'd be 25 years from the Ghostbusters 2. It's been too long for this type of a property. Studios are looking into doing that now. Look, you got Dumb and Dumber 2. We just had Anchorman 2. There's a lot of properties that are coming out. We've got another Jurassic Park movie that's coming out. Companies are taking these old franchises and trying to reinvigorate them. The problem is, though, is that they're running out of the ones that actually worked or that could have worked. And now they're going back to, okay, well, what else was a property back in the 80s or 70s or early 90s that we could do a new version of now? And that, to me, is a big problem because a lot of Hollywood is losing its originality. And I just have a big problem with properties like this saying, hey, there's dollar signs right there, guaranteed. I don't care if we crap over everybody's childhood. I don't care if we say what worked originally doesn't work anymore. Too bad. We're going to do it. And yeah, I mean, I'm done. I'm done with this franchise. I'm done with this property. That may change when we start getting who is going to be the creative team behind it, and specifically the idea that they have for the script. But as it stands right now, from what we've heard from Paul Feig being a part of this movie, for being a full female Ghostbusters group, no, that to me is just dumb. Have it be a mixture. Have it be, again, have the characters be non-gender specific. Write them as strong characters and cast accordingly. Whoever works best for that character. I mean, look at Star Wars. Star Wars Episode 7 originally had a character presumably that was written for a man. And when casting came around, they actually found that Gwendolyn Christie, who's on Game of Thrones, it actually worked better for the character, so they cast her. They cast a female in a originally male role because she fit the character the best. And that's what they should do. If this comes to pass, if this ends up being true, because as of right now it's not, he's just, he's in talks to be a part of it. If this does happen and this ends up being the movie, until we actually get some legitimate information about it, I'm done. I'm done. I will obviously be updating on the show as information does come out about this, but I am not excited about this property at all. I'm sorry, I cannot get myself behind it. I don't like the fact that it just smells like a gimmick. And again, you can read articles online where it talks about how this is not a gimmick, but I don't believe those for a second. It's like Frank Marshall coming out and saying, no, 2 days after they said, oh, Matt Damon's going to be in Bourne 5. And they came out, no, he's not, I swear to God. Or Khan's not in Star Trek 2, he's not the villain in Star Trek 2. Whenever they come out and refute information, it usually means that, yeah, they hit the nail on the head. So, I mean, if they come out and they say, hey, you know what, this is our team, this is our idea, this is our plot line, this is our villain, this is a concept of what they're going to look like, my idea or my point of view may change, but as it stands right now, with the information we have, I'm not excited about this. But if we get more information about it, I will definitely update you guys on here. All right, the last little bit of movie news, we got two little updates to talk about here. The first one is finally the sequel to Alice in Wonderland is getting underway, and I don't say finally because I'm looking forward to it. It was a really nice looking film. Johnny Depp, as always, and Helena Bonham Carter, as always, played kind of kooky characters. I did like the imaginativeness of the world. This thing that Tim Burton did create. It wasn't one of his best films, but there were certain aspects to enjoy about it. I just felt that the CG, it was tried to do too much at the time that it was available. Well, 4 years ago that movie came out, and it made over $1 billion at the box office. Let that sink in for a minute. $1 billion this movie made. 4.5 years later is when they actually get around to starting production on the sequel. As of this week, Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, which is the official title of the sequel, has started production. The filming has begun. Tim Burton will not be returning to direct the film. He's currently working on Big Eyes, which is he's working on Big Eyes, and he's working on another film as well that just got announced for a 2016 release. But James Bobbin, the guy who directed The Muppets, is the person who is currently on board to direct this film. Everybody from the first film is back. You got Johnny Depp playing Bonham Carter, Anne Hathaway, Mia Wasikowska, Alan Rickman's back, Stephen Fry's back, Matt Lucas is back. Everybody who was in the first one is back. And then they've got a couple of new additions to the film as well. But again, it really did surprise me that for a film that made over $1 billion, by the time we end up seeing this film, it will have been over 6 years. It doesn't come out till May of 2016. The exact date is May 27th, 2016. And in a business like Hollywood, it shocked the hell out of me that it took this long. You would have thought that sequel would have been greenlit right away. Because this movie is one of the few, I think there's maybe 15 movies in all of history that have crossed $1 billion. I may be off by a few on that, but it's around 15 in all of history. I mean, when you look at the month of July, more than 15 movies came out. Like big releases. Every week there was about 3 or 4 that came out. So to me, it was very, very surprising. But yeah, that movie has now started production. Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass will be released in May of 2016. So when we get more information about it on here, I'll definitely update you guys. And the next part that we have to talk about is Fantastic Four. Surprisingly, this film has been out of the media almost everywhere you look. With the exception of that leaked photo of the Thing that came out to give kind of an idea of what we're going to get from that character. We haven't really heard anything else outside of some of the comments. Like, the director said, don't read the source material. Or, we're not taking from any one specific storyline. Which, I'm glad that got clarified. But the movie just recently wrapped production. And to me, with them, like, again, we haven't got a lot from this property. So all it's up to us basically to speculate as to what's going on. And what I took away from it was they didn't do a lot of location shooting. They did a lot of soundstage shooting. Because there wasn't a lot of paparazzi, there wasn't a lot of photos, and there wasn't even really a lot of word of mouth on this property. We didn't get anything from it. And now it's done filming. It was only a 4-month shoot, by the way, which on a big budget superhero film, that's actually relatively short. Again, if they were just because they were in Louisiana, they were in New Orleans, and if they just stuck to shooting on sound stages, well, then that makes sense. They could have a 6-month production could actually be done in 4 months because you're not having to worry about travel or setting up, like having to dismantle something and reset it up somewhere else. You don't really have to worry about that when you're dealing with green screens and in controlled environments such as a sound stage. So the fact that we haven't even got a title treatment for this movie, though, has me a little worried. Because the majority of films out there, and I say majority, I don't mean all of them, I say the majority of all films out there, when they give their press release saying we've started production, that is the time where we get the title treatment. We get the title card for the movie, which, I mean, it can be updated as it goes on. But that's when we get the title card to show us, which will give us a perception of what we could potentially be getting from the film in terms of its tone. We won't get any imagery, we won't get any CG, we won't get any of that because these characters will take a lot of time to be generated in the computer. I mean, they got to figure out Mr. Fantastic's stretching ability without it making look silly. I think the only one that's going to look great regardless is going to be the Human Torch because they've already, to the point, almost mastered CG fire. Getting a CG rock monster to move and have it look proportionate, have it look like the laws of physics actually to apply, and things like that, getting it to look right, that's a little tricky. Invisible Woman, while not having her be fully invisible, still allowing the camera to see a semblance of her. And then obviously having Mr. Fantastic not look ridiculous when he stretches. Those are really tricky things to try to overcome. Especially in the way that I've heard that they are filming the movie, which is giving it a found footage feel. Not shooting it in found footage, but giving it that sort of feel, that real world feel, and how these characters are going to interact. But because we haven't gotten anything from it, to me, it says that the company doesn't have a lot of faith in the property. They're not willing really to get excited about it and to show it off. And I mean, look at what Sony did last year for Amazing Spider-Man 2, a film that ended up not performing as well as they wanted it to. It still performed great, but it didn't perform as well as it wanted to, and it didn't get as good a critical response and audience response that it wanted. But they started promoting that movie early. Like that, they had a big 3-minute clip at Comic-Con last year that leaked online. And then in December, when the film's first teaser trailer, and they called it the teaser trailer, it was a full 2.5-minute trailer. They did not shy away from this property at all. We got the title treatment very early on. You know, in December, we got a look at the 3 villains that were going to be in the movie. And again, this is coming a lot closer to production, but the fact remains, they were at Comic-Con and they showed a lot of footage at Comic-Con a year before their movie was going to be released. You know, we're less than a year. We're 10 months away from this movie being released, and we still haven't seen a single thing, not even a title card from it. So I'm very curious as to see what the studio has in line for this project, whether or not they're going to surprise the hell out of us in a couple of months with some great footage, or they have a specific time frame where once a month they'll release something until the release of the film, whether it be the official title of the film with the title card, and then they'll release the first picture of the Fantastic Four together, or they'll release the first picture of what Doctor Doom looks like, or what the Baxter Building looks like. There's plenty of things that they could do, but the fact that we haven't even got anything yet is really surprising to me, because all it says to me, again, all we can do is speculate here, but all it says to me is that the company does not have the same faith in this property that we all hope that they do. And again, we could be wrong, but they haven't given us anything to change our minds about that. And Comic-Con would have been the perfect place to just say, hey, you know what? We're wrapping production next week. We're very excited about the film. Here's the title card for you. You know, doesn't need to show us anything rendered from the film. Doesn't need to show us any footage whatsoever. Just give us the title card. Let people know that you are aware of their issues with your property, like what Marvel did with Ant-Man. Marvel had to kick that right in the ass to make sure that they got out ahead of all these problems and got people excited about this property again. But Fox has done nothing about that. They had a huge panel last year for X-Men, and this year nothing, not even a mention about Fantastic Four. So to me, it's very odd. But the movie comes out June 19th, 2015. With this huge special effects filled movie now moving into post-production, we're hopefully going to start to see a little bit more information. And God, I hope so. I'm intrigued about this property, but I'm starting to get a little ticked. And I know a lot of people are as well. They're starting to get a little tired of it because the information that has come out, a lot of it has not done well for this property. So they need to curb that. They need to fix that. When we get more information about it, though, I will update you guys on here. Well, that'll about do it for us here on Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. Thank you so much for watching. You guys have been a great audience. Go ahead and click the subscribe button down there at the bottom corner. You can get updates whenever we post a new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at Niklsun, Niklsun, for all of your movie updates. And you can find us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/movienewswithniklsun. And until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.